I always thought I had time. Time to enjoy the quiet moments with my son, Jack, and his wife, Emily. We'd moved up to Alaska 3 years ago, far from the noise of the city, into the peace of the mountains. At first, it was perfect. I would wake up early, make coffee, and look out over the snow-covered landscape while the rest of the house slept. It was a slow, comforting rhythm that I thought would last forever. "Mom, you're up early again," Jack would say, rubbing his eyes as he walked into the kitchen. I'd smile and pour him a cup of coffee. Someone has to keep an eye on this place, don't I? I always enjoyed these little moments. They felt like normal life, simple, safe, predictable. But lately, things had started to change. It was subtle at first. Jack's once eager greetings were replaced by distracted nods. Emily, usually warm and welcoming, now kept her distance as though something was off, though she never said what. I noticed that Jack was spending more time in his study, even during meals. "Everything all right, son?" I asked him one evening, trying to make conversation as I set the table. He didn't look up from his phone. "Yeah, just busy with work." "Don't worry about it, Mom." I try not to read too much into it. After all, I'd always been the one to worry. But as the days went on, the feeling gnawed at me, a sense that something was shifting, slipping right beneath my feet, and I couldn't catch it. "Jack, is something wrong?" I asked one night, after dinner, when he barely touched his food. His eyes were tired, his voice quieter than usual. "No, everything's fine." He said it quickly, too quickly. It wasn't the answer I was hoping for. It wasn't the Jack I knew. I had tried to dismiss it at first, but the distance between us kept growing, like an invisible thread pulling him away. It wasn't until I overheard a phone conversation one evening that I started to fear what was really happening. I didn't mean to listen in. I'm not that kind of person, but I caught a few words, a few phrases that made my stomach drop. "Yeah, I know. I'll handle it. Just keep her distracted. It's easier this way." I didn't catch the rest, but it was enough. I didn't know who he was talking to or what it all meant, but my heart sank. This wasn't just a small phase. This wasn't just him being busy or tired. Something was wrong. And somehow, I knew in that moment that whatever it was going to hurt. I wanted to confront him then. I wanted to march in there and demand the truth. But I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I stood there in the hallway, feeling like a stranger in my own home as the weight of uncertainty settled in my chest. I made my way back to the kitchen, trying to keep my hands from shaking as I cleaned up the dinner plates. "Mom," Emily's voice broke through my thoughts. I turned to face her, forcing a smile, though it didn't reach my eyes. "Yeah." She stood there in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Is everything okay?" "Of course," I lied, still trying to make sense of what I had overheard. "Everything's fine." She nodded but didn't leave. Instead, she just watched me, her gaze full of something I couldn't quite place. A flicker of concern? Guilt? Or was it something else? I couldn't tell. I didn't know what to think anymore. And that was when it hit me. This wasn't just a rough patch. This wasn't just a temporary distance. Something was happening here, and I was on the outside looking in. I tried to push the thought away, tried to tell myself that everything would work itself out. But deep down, I knew better. Something had changed, and it wasn't just my son. It was me too, my world, my family, the life I had come to love in this quiet place. I had no idea yet how deep the betrayal would go, or how badly it would hurt. But in that moment, I felt the first stirrings of the storm. It was coming, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I didn't expect it to happen like this. I thought maybe we could talk it out, work through whatever was wrong between us. But I had no idea how much my son had changed, how little I truly knew him anymore. It started like any other day. Jack had been quieter than usual, retreating into his study again. I tried to brush it off, but something told me this wasn't just about work. It was more than that. It had to be. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I had to know. So I walked into his study, where he sat hunched over his computer. He didn't look up when I came in, which only deepened the pit in my stomach. "Jack," I said softly, my voice trembling despite my attempt to keep it steady. "We need to talk." His fingers paused over the keyboard, but he didn't turn around. The tension in the room thickened, like the air before a storm. I felt my heart race. I had to do this. What's going on with you? I asked more firmly this time. He still didn't answer. Instead, he stood up abruptly, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. The sound sliced through the silence like a knife. I flinched. "Jack, please," I said, the pleading slipping into my voice. "I just want to understand. You've been pulling away, and I don't know why. What did I do wrong?" The words felt like a punch to my chest. I didn't know if I could take much more of this distance. But before I could say anything else, he snapped. "Do you even get it?" he shouted, his voice cold, a sharp contrast to the gentle son I once knew. I felt my throat tighten, the lump of fear and confusion rising there. "You're in the way. You've been in the way for too long." I stared at him, dumbfounded, unable to process the venom in his words. "What do you mean, Jack? I don't need you here anymore." His voice cracked with frustration, and before I could react, he raised his hand. It happened so fast, so violently. The slap, the stinging heat across my cheek, the shock of it, the shock that it came from him. My son. The force of it knocked me back, and for a moment I just stood there, frozen. The world seemed to spin around me, my vision blurring as my mind tried to catch up. I barely registered the hot tears that welled up in my eyes, the humiliation searing through me. I touched my cheek, still feeling the sting of the slap, but it was the words that cut deeper. "This isn't your home anymore," he said, his tone harsh and final. "Get out." The world stopped. It felt like time itself had halted, and all I could hear was the echo of his words, ringing in my ears. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. My son, the one I had raised, the one I had loved with all my heart, he was telling me to leave, to get out of the home I had helped build, the place where I thought I'd be welcome for the rest of my life. I shook my head, unable to comprehend what was happening. "Jack, please," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I don't understand. What did I do wrong?" "You didn't do anything wrong," he spat, his face twisted with anger and something I couldn't quite place. Disgust, maybe. "You're just a burden. I don't want you here anymore." His words were like a blade, each one cutting through the ties that had once bound us together. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, to shout at him, to beg him to remember who I was to him, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I felt the familiar sting of tears, the kind that burn your throat and twist your heart. I turned and stumbled out of his study, my legs unsteady, my head spinning. I felt like I was losing myself, like I was losing everything. When I stepped into the living room, Emily was standing there, silent, watching the scene unfold with cold eyes. She didn't say a word. I didn't need her to. I knew that she was already on his side, already done with me too. I felt it in the way she looked at me, like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. I walked out of the house, my hands shaking, my heart breaking. The world seemed too loud, too overwhelming. I stood on the front steps, looking back at the home that had once been a sanctuary, a place where love was supposed to be unconditional. But now, it felt like nothing more than a cage. I didn't have anywhere to go, no place to turn. I felt hollow, like a part of me had been ripped out and tossed aside. I had no family left. I had no home. I had nothing, except the painful realization that my son, the person I had trusted most in this world, had just betrayed me in the worst way possible. I wanted to scream, to rage against the unfairness of it all. But the only thing I could do was stand there, my heart shattered, and wonder how I could ever look at him the same way again. How could I ever forgive him for this? But even as my chest ached with the weight of the betrayal, I knew one thing for certain. My life would never be the same again. I never imagined I'd be here, sitting alone in a tiny rented cabin, far from the home I once knew. The walls are bare, just a small bed, an old wooden chair, and a table that's seen better days. The floor creaks with every step, and there's a chill in the air, though the heater is on full blast. Nothing feels right. It's been a week since Jack slapped me, since the world I thought I knew came crashing down. I can still feel the sting on my cheek, though the physical pain has faded. What remains is deeper, something harder to describe, something that weighs heavy on my chest. I thought it was just a misunderstanding, that maybe he was having a bad day. But now, as I sit in this quiet cabin, all I can think about is how easily he threw me out, how quickly he dismissed me like I was nothing. My son, the one person I thought I could trust, the one person I thought would always be there for me. But here I am alone. A part of me can't quite believe it's real. How did we go from family dinners, laughing around the table, to him slapping me and telling me to leave? Where did I go wrong? How did I miss the signs? I stare out the small window, looking at the snow-covered ground, trying to make sense of everything. But it's useless. My mind keeps replaying that moment over and over again, like a broken record. His voice cold and final. His face twisted with anger and something I don't understand. And Emily, she was just standing there, watching. Not a word of comfort, not a word of defense. It was like I wasn't even human to them anymore. A knock on the door snaps me out of my thoughts. I don't expect anyone, so I hesitate for a moment before getting up. When I open the door, I'm surprised to find Anna standing there, her worried eyes scanning my face. "Hey," she says softly, offering a warm smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. "Can I come in?" I step aside, allowing her into the small cabin. She looks around, taking in the sparse furniture and the emptiness of the place. "I can't believe this is where you're staying," she murmurs, shaking her head. "I thought Jack. Well, I thought he'd never do something like this. Anna's been a friend of mine for years, someone who's always been there when I needed her. But even with her here, I feel the weight of my grief. I never thought he would either," I say, my voice barely above a whisper. She sits down on the small bed, patting the spot next to her. "You want to talk about it?" I hesitate for a moment, unsure of how to even begin. What do I say? How do I explain the feeling of being so utterly rejected by my own flesh and blood? I don't know what happened, I admit, sitting beside her. I can't understand why he did it. I thought I was a good mother. I gave him everything. And now, my voice cracks, and the tears I've been holding back finally spill over. Now he's gone. He's not the same person anymore. Anna's hand rests gently on my shoulder. He's changed, that's for sure. But that doesn't mean you have to carry the weight of his choices, okay? You're not the one who's broken. I wipe my tears, feeling both grateful and ashamed. I'm embarrassed by my weakness. I should be stronger than this, but I can't help it. The hurt is too deep. I close my eyes, remembering the days when Jack was younger. When we'd go on long walks together, or when he'd fall asleep on the couch with his head on my lap after a long day at school. I remember his first bike ride, how he fell and scraped his knee, but how he'd smiled through the pain and kept going. He was my little boy, full of hope, full of love. I can't reconcile that image with the man who slapped me, who turned me out without a second thought. How did it happen, Anna? I ask, my voice barely a whisper. How did we get here? How did he turn into someone I don't even recognize? Anna is quiet for a moment, her gaze soft as she thinks. I don't know, but you can't keep blaming yourself for it. People change, sometimes in ways we don't understand. And sometimes they hurt the ones they love, not because they want to, but because they're lost. Maybe Jack's lost too. I let her words sink in, but they don't bring me the peace I was hoping for. The pain of his betrayal still lingers, a dull ache that I can't escape. It's not just about being thrown out of the house. It's about the destruction of the relationship we had. I just don't understand why he couldn't come to me. Why he couldn't talk to me instead of, I pause, shaking my head, unable to finish the sentence. I don't either, Anna says gently. But maybe it's not too late for you to heal, to rebuild your life. You're stronger than this, you know. I look at her, trying to believe her words. But all I feel is a hollow emptiness where my trust and love for my son used to be. There's no way to undo what's been done. I've been torn apart, and I don't know if I can ever be whole again. The silence stretches between us, heavy with all the things left unsaid. I want to believe that I'll heal, that I'll find peace. But for now, all I have is the echo of Jack's words in my mind, the hurt, and the emptiness that fills the space where my family once stood. The days in this tiny cabin have begun to blur together. I wake up, eat, and stare at the walls, waiting for something to break the silence. My life, once filled with the sounds of family, laughter, chatter, The everyday noise of being together has become a hollow echo. My son is gone, and so is the life I knew. I sit at the small table, my hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee, staring at the letter on the table. The envelope is plain, the handwriting unfamiliar, but the return address sends a shock through me. It's from Jack's old friend, Thomas. I haven't seen him in years, but we've kept in touch off and on. Why would he be writing to me now? I hadn't even thought about Thomas in months. I slowly rip open the envelope, the paper trembling in my hands as if it knows what's inside. The letter is short, but it hits me like a wave. Dear Mrs. Harper, I don't know how to say this, but I feel you deserve to know what's been happening with Jack. He hasn't been himself lately. He's under a lot of pressure, and he's been dealing with things he hasn't told you about. Financial troubles, his marriage falling apart. I think the anger you've seen in him is more than just frustration. It's fear. He's afraid of losing everything, including you. I hope this helps you understand. He's not a monster, just a man lost in his own mess. Take care. Thomas. I read the letter again, trying to make sense of the words. Fear. That's what Thomas says Jack is feeling. But fear doesn't justify what Jack did to me. Fear doesn't explain the slap, the coldness, the way he kicked me out of his life without a second thought. I dropped the letter onto the table, my heart pounding. Anger bubbles up inside me, hot and sharp. How could he do this? How could he let his fear, his mistakes, destroy everything we had? But then, another part of me, something softer, more vulnerable, remembers the boy who used to curl up in my lap, the man who promised he would always take care of me. The love I had for him, the years I spent raising him, they don't just vanish. And despite everything, part of me still wants to reach out, still wants to believe that maybe, just maybe, I can forgive him. Forgiveness. It's such a simple word, but it feels impossible right now. He hurt me in a way I never imagined he could, and yet, I still feel this pull toward him. My love for him doesn't just vanish, and no matter how much I try to harden my heart, I can't ignore the part of me that still wants him back in my life. I think of the slap again. The way his eyes looked cold, empty, like he wasn't even the same person anymore. Was it just fear? Was it really just fear that made him act that way? Or was it something deeper, something I missed while I was too busy taking care of everything else? My hand tightens around the letter, crumpling the paper slightly. I want to rage, to scream at him, to make him understand what he did to me. He deserves to feel the weight of his actions, to see how much he's hurt me. I can make him pay for what he's done. I can make him feel the pain he caused. But then, I remember the boy I raised, the man I thought I knew. I remember the times he leaned on me, the way he trusted me to help him find his way. I remember his laughter, the way his eyes softened when he was around people he loved. This man, this stranger who slapped me, he's not the same person, and yet, somewhere inside, he's still Jack. I stand up, pacing the small room, my mind racing. What do I do now? Do I confront him? Demand an apology? Demand an explanation for everything, for all the pain he's caused me? I've dreamed of doing it, walking back into his house and making him see the damage he's done. But would it even help? Would it heal the wounds, or just reopen them? I can feel the weight of my decision bearing down on me. Revenge feels sweet, but forgiveness feels like it would be letting him off too easy. After everything, doesn't he deserve to feel the pain he caused me? But as the minutes pass, the anger begins to fade. I'm still hurting, yes, but I also know that holding on to this anger, this bitterness, will only eat away at me. And if I keep holding on to the past, I'll never heal. The weight in my chest lightens slightly as I realize something. I don't need his apology. I don't need his forgiveness. I need to move on. For myself. I need to stop letting his actions define my worth. I'm not weak, I whisper to myself. I can move on. I can survive this. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about finding peace. About healing. I can't control what Jack has done, but I can control how I respond. I can choose to forgive, not for him, but for me. So I'll choose that path. But deep down, I know that it won't be easy. Forgiving him will take time, and it will take strength I'm not sure I have yet. But I'll find it. just as I'll find my way back to the life I deserve. For the first time in a long while, I feel something I thought was gone. Hope. The days after my decision to move on were strange. A little quieter, a little more peaceful, but still filled with an emptiness I couldn't quite shake. Jack's betrayal had cracked something deep inside me, but for the first time, I felt a flicker of control. I didn't need him anymore, not in the way I thought I did. I had learned that much. But even with my newfound resolve, I still couldn't help watching. I couldn't stop wondering what was happening in Jack's life, though I had promised myself I wouldn't get caught up in it. I wasn't sure if it was out of concern or curiosity, but I found myself checking social media, keeping an eye on the small pieces of information I could find. What was happening to him? How far had he fallen? What I discovered wasn't pretty. It wasn't just the quiet, distant man I had seen a few days ago. It was the unraveling of everything he had built. His marriage with Emily was falling apart faster than I had imagined. She'd moved out, and I could tell from her posts that she was done with him. I didn't know the specifics, but I knew enough. There was no love left there. Only resentment, bitterness, and disappointment. I shouldn't have been surprised. I had seen the cracks in their relationship long before this. Emily was never quite the same after I had moved in with them. She had been kind to me at first, but I knew it wasn't easy for her. And Jack, he was always so focused on his work, on keeping up appearances. I had tried to warn him. I had tried to tell him that family was the most important thing. But he didn't listen. His career, too, was slipping away. The small business he'd worked so hard to build was failing. I found a news article about him, a short, blunt statement about his company laying off employees, facing legal issues. It hit me like a punch in the stomach. I couldn't help but wonder, was this what he had been hiding? Was all the anger, the frustration, the resentment toward me a result of his fear? Was I the one he took all his failures out on? I should have felt satisfaction. I should have felt vindicated, like the universe was paying him back for what he had done to me. But I didn't. Instead, I just felt hollow, like I was watching a train crash from a distance. The old Jack, the one I loved, the one I had been proud of, was disappearing, replaced by someone I didn't even recognize. I remained silent through it all. I didn't reach out. I didn't call him. I let him sink into his consequences, knowing that no amount of my intervention could change the course of his downfall. The truth was, he needed to face this. He needed to feel the weight of his own actions. He had to see how his decisions had hurt everyone around him, including me. At first, it stung to see him struggle, but slowly, something inside me shifted. It wasn't that I wanted to see him suffer. It was more like the anger I had held for so long started to fade. I had been so consumed by my own pain, so blinded by my need for an apology, that I had missed the bigger picture. The world was already punishing him. Karma, as painful as it was to witness, was taking care of things in its own way. The more I watched, the more I realized how powerless I had been in trying to control his life. The more I understood that I had been holding on to a version of him that didn't exist anymore. He had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. I was no longer responsible for fixing him. As the days passed, I started to rebuild my own life, piece by piece. Small steps, nothing dramatic, just the quiet reclaiming of my independence. I started volunteering at the local shelter, something I hadn't done in years. I took long walks by the lake, letting the cool breeze clear my mind. I worked on myself, healing, slowly, in ways I hadn't expected. I spent more time with Anna, finding comfort in her company, and I began to feel a sense of peace that I hadn't known in months. It wasn't easy, not by a long shot. I still thought about Jack, about what had happened between us, but I stopped letting it consume me. His actions had hurt me, yes, but they didn't define me. I was learning to live without him, to move on with the life I had left. I could see now that the hardest part wasn't forgiving him. It was accepting that I couldn't change him. I couldn't fix him. I couldn't fix us. But I could fix me. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. I wasn't looking for his apology. I was looking for my own peace, and I was finally starting to find it. It's strange. how quickly life can shift when you stop clinging to the past. For so long, I had lived under the shadow of Jack's actions, like I was tethered to him by invisible strings, each one pulling me deeper into despair. But now, slowly, those strings were snapping one by one. I woke up this morning for the first time in what felt like forever, with a sense of calm. There was no gnawing anxiety, no dread of what the day might bring, just peace. I hadn't realized how much of my life had been dictated by Jack's anger and decisions until I stepped away. The moment I stopped waiting for his apology, stopped hoping he'd change, everything started to fall into place. I'd taken the first real steps toward independence a few weeks ago. I'd started looking for part-time work, something I could do from home. I didn't need to work full-time, not at my age, but I needed something to keep my mind active, something to remind me that I was still capable of standing on my own 2 feet. I found a small online tutoring job, helping high school students with their English papers. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It gave me purpose. It gave me a sense of control that I hadn't felt in years. As the days passed, I saw my financial independence as the first real step in my recovery. I wasn't reliant on anyone anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone else to save me. And that realization, one I never thought I'd come to, was liberating. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to live again. I spent more time focusing on what I wanted rather than what I had lost. I began to make plans, small, realistic plans for the future. Maybe I would travel a little, visit places I had always dreamed of. Maybe I would take up painting again, something I had put off for far too long. I was beginning to imagine a life that didn't revolve around my son, a life that didn't require his approval, his love, or his presence. The thought used to hurt, knowing that I was no longer needed in the way I had been. But now I felt free. Free from the guilt, the resentment, the emotional chains I had carried for so long. I didn't need Jack's validation anymore. I was enough just as I was. Meanwhile, as I focused on my healing, Jack's life continued to unravel. News of his company's financial struggles spread, and the gossip reached me sooner than I expected. People talked about the layoffs, the legal battles, and the rumors of his personal life, his marriage falling apart, his isolation. He had turned into someone I barely recognized. His downfall was swift, and the more it happened, the more I realized that his problems were never really about me. They were about him, about his choices, his inability to face his own demons. The realization hit me hard. I had spent so much time worrying about him, about what he thought of me, about the way he had treated me. But in the end, he was the one who had to live with his decisions. He was the one who had to look at himself in the mirror every day and face the person he had become. And as much as I hurt, as much as I resented him, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pity. I had no desire to see him suffer. But the truth was, he had brought this on himself. The choices he had made, the lies, the anger, the betrayal, had led him here, to this place of regret and isolation. And all I could do was watch from a distance, knowing that he would have to come to terms with it eventually. I think that was when I truly started to let go. I didn't need to fix him. I didn't need to rescue him. I needed to rescue myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt strong. I wasn't the broken, helpless woman I had been weeks ago. I was a survivor. I was my own person with my own dreams, my own goals. And nothing, not Jack, not his mistakes, not his regret, could take that away from me. The power dynamics had shifted, and it wasn't Jack who held the control anymore. It was me. I had taken my life back. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my son, take that from me again. I stood up from my chair and walked over to the small window, looking out at the snowy horizon. The world felt quiet, but not in the way it had before. This time, the silence was peaceful, filled with possibility. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next. It was a cold afternoon when I saw the first sign of Jack reaching out. The phone rang, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. I hesitated, my heart leaping into my throat. I hadn't heard from him in weeks, and I didn't know if I was ready to hear what he had to say. But I couldn't ignore it. Not after everything. I answered, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound composed. "Hello, Mom," came Jack's voice, softer than I'd ever heard it. "It's me." There was a pause, like he was trying to find the right words. "I need to talk to you." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I didn't want to let him back into my life without first understanding what had changed. "What is it, Jack?" I asked, my voice steady, but my heart was racing. He sighed, his frustration clear. "I know I screwed up. I know what I did to you, and I've been thinking about it a lot. I don't know where to start, but I'm sorry. I was wrong." "Please, Mom, I didn't let him finish. I knew what was coming, and I wasn't ready for empty words. "Sorry," I echoed, my voice sharp. "You're sorry." I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the anger creeping back into my voice. "You think a few words are going to fix this? You think sorry is enough?" There was silence on the other end, and I could almost hear the regret in his pause. "Mom, I know I hurt you. I know I can't take back what I did, but I want to make it right. I'll do whatever it takes to." "No," I interrupted, my voice steady now, a calm fury simmering underneath. "You don't get to make it right, Jack. Not just by saying sorry. You tore this family apart. You destroyed everything. And now you want me to forgive you just like that?" I could hear him struggling to find the words, and I knew what he was trying to do. He was trying to regain control, to manipulate me into letting him back in. But it wasn't going to work this time. I wasn't the same woman who had put up with his lies and excuses. Not anymore. "I don't need your apology," I said, my voice firm now, cutting through the tension between us. "I don't need you to tell me how sorry you are. What I need is justice. I need you to understand that what you did, what you took from me, it's not something you can just sweep under the rug." Jack's voice cracked, and for a moment, I almost felt sympathy for him. Almost. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he continued, his words laced with regret, but I could hear the pride in his voice too. The pride that kept him from fully accepting the gravity of his actions. The pride that kept him from fully facing what he had done. "Then why did you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you kick me out of the house? Why did you treat me like I was nothing?" "I don't know," he said softly. "I was angry. I was lost. I wasn't thinking." "That's the problem, Jack," I said, my words slow and deliberate. "You never thought about anyone but yourself. Not me. Not your wife. And now look at you. Look at everything you've lost. Your marriage. Your career. You've ruined everything." The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken words. I knew what he wanted. He wanted me to say that it was okay, that I understood, that I would take him back. But I couldn't. I couldn't just forgive him, not without change. Not after everything. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice breaking through the silence. "I can't keep pretending that things can go back to the way they were. You've changed, Jack, and not for the better. I don't even know who you are anymore." "Mom, please," his voice cracked again, desperate now. "I need you. I need my mom. I can't fix this without you." "No," I said firmly, the finality in my words hitting both of us hard. "You don't need me. You need to fix yourself. And until you do, I'm not coming back. I'm not your safety net anymore. You've broken that trust. You've broken me. And I'm done." There was a long pause, and when he spoke again, it was with a quiet, defeated tone. "I understand," he said. "I'm sorry." I felt the weight of those words, but they didn't have the power to heal me anymore. They didn't have the power to undo the damage he had caused. "I hope you figure it out, Jack," I said softly, my voice steady. "But it's too late for us. Goodbye." I hung up before he could say anything else. The silence that followed felt suffocating, but somehow it was also a relief. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long, this unbearable need for closure, for an apology, was finally lifted. I didn't need his approval. I didn't need his love. What I needed was to move on. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. It was done. Jack had made his choices, and I had made mine. There would be no reconciliation. There would be no coming back from this. And that was okay. I stood on the small porch of my cabin, the cold wind biting at my skin. But for once, I didn't mind it. There was a certain clarity in the air today, like the world itself was finally giving me a chance to breathe again. For so long, I had carried the weight of Jack's betrayal, the crushing disappointment, the anger that boiled within me. I had lived in the shadow of that pain, letting it consume me, letting it shape who I was. But now, standing here in the quiet of the Alaskan wilderness, I could feel it, finally, the shift. The last of the anger, the last of the bitterness was slipping away. I had spent so much time waiting for some form of justice. I had dreamed of a confrontation where I would make Jack understand the gravity of his actions, where he would apologize, and we could somehow go back to the way things were. But that was a fantasy I had let go of long ago. Now, as I looked out over the snow-covered landscape, I realized something. I didn't need revenge to feel powerful. I didn't need to wait for Jack to come crawling back, asking for forgiveness. My healing, my independence, these were my victories. And no one, not even Jack, could take that from me. I had watched him spiral. His career was in shambles, his marriage had fallen apart, and the people around him had started to distance themselves. It wasn't karma, it was consequence. It wasn't the kind of justice I had hoped for, but it was the kind that came naturally when you treat people like they didn't matter. It was the kind of justice that unfolded when you pushed everyone away, when you lied and hid behind your pride. Jack had made his bed, and now he was lying in it. But even in that, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel the sense of victory I thought I would. Instead, I felt sorrow. Sorrow for the son I had lost. Sorrow for the man he had become. But even more, I felt gratitude. Because in witnessing his downfall, I had found my own strength. I had learned that I didn't need to rely on him, or anyone, to define my worth. I had learned that the most important thing I could do was to forgive. Not him, but myself. I let the wind bite in my face, the sting a reminder that I was alive, that I had survived. I had walked through fire, had been burned by the person I trusted most, and yet here I was. I wasn't broken. I wasn't a victim. I was a survivor. The pain was still there, of course. It wasn't something that disappeared overnight, but it had faded into something manageable, something I could live with. The weight of the past no longer crushed me. The bitterness no longer seeped into every part of my life. I had let go. I had forgiven myself for the ways I had blamed myself, for the guilt I had carried for so long. I had freed myself from the prison of my own resentment. A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth as I thought of the future. I had started making plans. Small ones, like taking that painting class I had always wanted to try, or traveling to see the places I had always dreamed of visiting. The world was still out there, waiting for me to take my next step. And I was ready. But it wasn't just about the future. It was about the present. It was about the life I had right now, the life I was building on my own. I didn't need anyone's permission to be happy. I didn't need anyone's approval to feel worthy. The sound of my phone ringing broke me from my thoughts. I glanced down at the screen, not surprised to see Jack's name. I had known this moment would come eventually. He had tried to apologize before, but I hadn't been ready to listen. I didn't need to hear it anymore. I didn't need to hear his excuses. His words were hollow, his regret too little, too late. I let the phone ring and then pressed the decline button. I had nothing left to say to him. Not anymore. As I stood there in the cold, feeling the weight of the silence around me, I knew it was over. Jack had made his choices, and I had made mine. I had chosen to live. I had chosen to forgive myself and move forward. I was no longer bound by the past, by his actions, by his mistakes. I was free, and that, more than anything else, was the greatest victory of all. I turned and stepped back into the cabin, the door closing softly behind me. I was ready for whatever came next, ready to face the world on my own terms, because I knew now I didn't need anyone to complete me. I was already whole. It's strange how peace doesn't always come with a big bang. Sometimes it settles in slowly, quietly, like the soft dawn after a storm. And that's how it's been for me. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, my life has shifted from chaos to calm, from anger to acceptance. I've come to understand that justice isn't always about retribution. Sometimes it's about letting go. I no longer crave the apology Jack will never give me. I no longer need his approval, his love, or his understanding. For the longest time, I thought I was nothing without those things. I thought that my worth was tied to his affection, his validation. But now I know that my worth is mine alone. I am enough just as I am. I've spent so many years measuring my life by his actions, his moods, his love. But I've learned that I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need anyone's permission to feel worthy. I found a strength inside me I didn't even know was there, a resilience that has carried me through the darkest of times. And for that, I am grateful. I remember when the thought of losing Jack seemed like the end of the world. It felt like the deepest kind of betrayal, and I couldn't imagine a life without him in it. But now I've realized that sometimes people are meant to leave our lives. Not all relationships are meant to last, and that's okay. We grow, we change, and sometimes we outgrow each other. It doesn't make the hurt any less real, but it helps to understand that the end of one chapter is just the beginning of another. The silence between us has become a kind of peace. I no longer dread the sound of his voice on the other end of the phone. I no longer feel the weight of his absence in my life. His choices no longer define me. I have my own life now, and I'm no longer waiting for him to return to fix things. I'm learning to live for me, and that, in itself, is enough. I've started doing the things I've always wanted to do. I've reconnected with old friends, people I'd lost touch with over the years. I've been working on my art again, something I'd put on hold for far too long. I've taken trips to places I've always wanted to see, explored new towns, and met new people. The world is wide, and I'm finally starting to explore it. I'm beginning to believe in the possibility of new beginnings. I've even made a new friend. Her name is Susan, and she's a woman I met at the local bookstore of all places. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love of classic literature and quiet mornings with a cup of coffee. It's small, but it's something. She's become someone I can talk to, someone I can share my thoughts with without fear of judgment. And while I don't expect anything more than a friendship, it's a connection I've cherished. It's a reminder that life, despite all its losses, still has room for new experiences. Jack's absence doesn't hurt the way it used to. There's no more longing for the son I thought I knew. No more wishing for the relationship that could have been. The hurt still lingers, but it's no longer a constant ache. It's more like a scar now, something that has healed but left a mark. It's a reminder, but not a burden. Looking back, I realized that everything I went through was a lesson in self-discovery, in resilience, in the strength that comes from standing on your own 2 feet, even when it feels like the ground beneath you is crumbling. I've learned to trust my instincts, to listen to my own heart, and to rely on myself. That's something I could never have imagined a year ago. As I sit here now in the quiet of the evening with the soft glow of the setting sun filtering through the window, I feel at peace. The pain is still there, tucked away in the corners of my heart, but it no longer controls me. I've let it go. The past is behind me. And as I look toward the future, I can't help but feel hopeful. The world is wide and my life is just beginning. I'm no longer a victim of my circumstances. I'm a survivor, and that makes all the difference. It's time to move forward. It's time to embrace what comes next, whatever it may be. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid. I'm ready.